is everybody today? It's a beautiful morning. I am having this lovely morning. It's still smoky outside. It's still supposed to be hot, but it's beautiful. It's really hazy, but I have watched a neighborhood kitty cat catch a mouse, and I've watched Astra watch the kitty cat catch the mouse. And I have watched a pair of ducks go in the water this morning. I have watched the wind kick in and then die down again. It's just beautiful. It's so beautiful. My name is Red Moon Eagle, and you're watching Daily Devotions with Red Moon Eagle. And I come live as often as I can, and I do bank videos, so you'll see some of those. There's over 365 days of Daily Devotional. And right now we're going through a series of oracle cards, and we're going through a series that has to do with how it's a combination of several things. It's a little bit of numerology, a little bit of sacred geometry, and a little bit of the medicine wheel, which I'm always working with the medicine wheel. I've been on the low key working with the medicine wheel for decades, but I really brought it forward in the last year because I know that it's time. And there's a lot of work that I've done with it. So I've just decided to bring it forward and not be hiding it anymore and not be worried so much. Okay, so we're gonna start with the 1-5 combination, which is the Sacred Geometry Activations Oracle Guidebook. And the card that I drew today is Alchemy, and which is why I bring up the medicine wheel, because an alchemical change, we'll read the card first. The frequency of alchemy activates our magical ability and embraces the magic that we all hold inside. Each one of us has the potential to access the ancient knowledge that allows the true alchemist to perform the miracles of transmutation. Alchemy usually refers to the process of transforming matter, particularly that from metal into gold. In a more esoteric sense, alchemy has been associated with the magical transformation that has to do with longevity. Magic is as real as we allow ourselves to believe. Whether we aim to transform metal into gold or wish to find the secret of life, the immortality of the soul. When we access the mysterious, the subtle, and the often undefined parts of ourselves that light us up, we get a taste of real magic. Love is one of the greatest, most mysterious, magical energies of the universe. When love comes to us, we open our hearts and welcome it. True alchemy can work its magic on every aspect of our being. The alchemy image shows how one becomes two, or is it the other way around? From the center or source, spin the two aspects of masculine and feminine, or positive and light, or shadow and light, or the opposite sides of magnetism, representing the dualistic world of the physical plane. The bright orange represents the color of our sacral chakra, which is linked to our sexuality, our connection to others, and its freeing effect on the body and mind. Purple and violet represent our connection to the inner realms and source, indicating that our consciousness is as much part of the merging as our physical bodies are. The large triangles refer to the union between the masculine and feminine, where the upward triangle represents masculine, downward feminine, and the number 6, circles and light sources, represent harmony, love, and balance. I'm going to talk about this in a minute. We're going to move on. So, 2-6 is de la nuit, and the card that I drew today was 6, Little Red Riding Hood. My story. I was on my way to visit grandmother when I met this wolf. I didn't realize how dangerous he was or how hungry. Thoughtlessly, I spoke to him, and even worse, I showed him the way to Granny's house. He ran to her house, ate her, and took her place in bed. When I arrived, I noticed that something was strange, and I stayed just the same. Some say that in the end the wolf ate me. Others say that a hunter saved me. Anyway, this is the lesson to remember. My message is, beware that there is danger around the corner. If you have to go through the woods, do not leave the path. Be very careful about what you do and what you say. Don't trust people too lightly. Be cautious, be on your guard. A wolf is eager to eat you. So the best thing to do right now is just keep yourself out of his way and not leave the path, and it will lead you home safe and sound. I'm going to come back to this one. We're going into Shadow 2 and 6 with that one today. Okay, Masule, Oracle of Souls. And this is the 3-7. Now, Lady of Masks is in the Empire of Urkala, a realm of bright and dark dualities. In Urkala, sorrow and joy are shared in balance with equal measure. The gods of Urkala value obligation and sacrifice. Few who enter this domain are ever permitted to leave again. To dwell in Urkala is to accept the obligations of society, to seek a simple and finite existence, to understand the balance between one's rational mind and one's emotional experience. So the Lady of Mask is called the Shaper. Can't read today. Shaper. Okay. The Lady of Masks dwells on a vast and desolate plain, dotted with the petrified remains of dead gods. Those who have no faith or worshippers to animate them, using the faded remains of their power, she reshapes the physical appearance of the souls who seek her out for a price. But this change is pure vanity, changing nothing of who they are at the core, or even how the actual powers of the Masule who see truly perceive them. The Lady of Masks can grant us costume only, useful to boost the confidence, but it reflects who we are or wish to be. We should remember, however, that when it comes down to what matters, we are fooling no one. The domains of reclamation, vanity, and surface appearances. Okay, so we'll come back to the 3-7. And the Lantern Oracle is our 4-8 transformation. So the card is Metamorphosis, but it is in phase 1. So phase 1 is the maiden, child, adolescent, openness, vitality, and vulnerability. So 11, Metamorphosis. Power and strength lie within your surrender to change. While many forces, circumstances, and events significantly impact, constrain, and direct our lives, we still have many choices. The trick is to recognize where they are and deliberately choose and therefore shape the overall transformative outcome we experience. The nature of life is an ongoing invitation and at times challenges us to participate in its perpetual metamorphosis. Creative perception, critical thinking, authentic action, and courage can assist us in making the most of the choices available to us. Our decisions are how we adapt and come to own and know ourselves through any significant change that is not of our choosing. The maiden struggles to let go of maidenhood. She clings to the androgyny of girlhood and steadfastly resists the onset of puberty that is propelling her out of the most insular chapter of her life. Change is a process of decay, clearing, regeneration, and renewal through growth that is typically challenging, messy, and emotional. Like the maiden, we too can feel overwhelmed, confused, and even traumatized in the face of change. Even in instances where change has been desired and self-initiated, it can still feel disruptive, like an intrusion. You may be at a point where something needs to give. There may also be a significant past change that remains unprocessed and therefore disruptively unassimilated to your current situation. Whether or not the impending or past change is wanted, be gentle and compassionate with yourself. Tend lovingly to any feelings of confusion, dislocation, fear, anger, frustration, or loss. Take the time to recognize and act on the choices you currently have based on your decisions on what will meet any needs that your adaptation process requires. The maiden's message: let go of what is letting go of you. Allow the tide of time to take what it wants back into the ocean of life and release new treasures upon your shore. Always ask yourself, what is my power to choose right now? What choice do I want to make here and why? Is this decision ultimately from a place of self-love? If you're not sure, ask yourself, is the choice aligned with what pure source of love would choose for itself? Okay. So this is a really good transformational card draw. So it's really interesting. I don't know if it's by universal design, but I have noticed a pattern that recently I've basically gotten down to one daily devotional week that's live. And I am still banking, but it's very interesting. There's a quality of the live transformational process, like drawing the cards. Well, there's several things, right? Like my meditation, my own journaling, my own draws, and then what I draw for daily devotion. And it's usually something that seems to kind of impact the week. There's like a flow that goes with it. And when I post a second transformational daily devotional that I post, you know, I bank them and I randomly select, and then I post the second one later in the week, there's a connection between the two. I actually went back for the last 2 weeks and I was looking and I was like, wow, they're actually connected randomly. The universe just does its thing, right? So when I'm looking at the 1-5 and I'm looking at how the other things are pulled together today, it's this activating your remembrance and the potential to access your ancestral and your connection to the universe. And one of the things I noticed about all the cards today is that they all have to do with choices, and they all have to do with the shadow and light journey that you're going through in your life. And this card talks a lot about transmutation. And I don't usually talk a lot about transmutation with my empaths unless they have both energy sensitivity and empathy. But there is a quality about how we synthesize our experiences and how we take what we need and leave the rest, and we synthesize that and make it part of who we are. And it could be because of the neurodivergence that I've got going on, that I'm very aware of how patterns work. I'm very aware of taking and recognizing what is important and then leaving the rest, and knowing that later, whatever the rest of that message was, it'll circle back and I'll get what I need from that at another time. But this card right here really leans into this dynamic of the 3-6-9 combination. And it also reminds us of the duality, the shadow and light. And even within shadow and light, you have a component of shadow and light, and then you have that gray area, all the gray shades in between. And those shades are really important when you're looking at what it is that you're taking into your life, what do you need, and where do you synthesize and transmute what you need in that moment, in that connection, in that lesson, okay, whatever it may be. So it's really very much the recognition that the world isn't really in black and white. The world isn't really good and bad. The world isn't really these polarities. It's a constant flowing, moving thing where you're moving and you're transmuting and you're synthesizing and you're dancing, really, moment to moment, and taking what you need in that moment and releasing the rest. And then we get to the shadow of the 2-6. So Red Riding Hood is very much the shadow of the 2-6. The making the connection with the traveler on the road, giving up your boundaries, and then the fear, right, of whether or not you're going to be good enough to survive, whether or not that wolf's going to eat you, right? So getting lost in the relationship and getting lost in the modality of whether or not you're good enough to be in the world, that you have something to contribute. And there's a connection thing that happens with a 2-6, I've noticed. There's this engagement, right, with this beautiful smile and the joy of connection and working with people and being in the connection, and the joy of dance and movement and seeking the next thing, always moving around and always having people around you. And the shadow of that is losing yourself in that dance, in that connection, in that duality that's constantly happening of light and shadow, or light and dark, through the dance of the shadow. And 2-6 is really very much represented in this alchemical movement with the shadows of all of that. Getting lost in the dance, losing yourself, not knowing what your boundaries are, not knowing the direction you're going in, not having enough movement in your own knowingness, movement in your body, movement in your mind, movement in how you're connecting with the people around you. No relationship is stagnant. You know, I've talked to people over the years where they're like, I feel like my marriage, I love my partner, but we're not having sex. So are we really married, right? Or I love my partner, but we do the same thing all the time. There's no spice. There's no new thing. It's extremely common to find relationships get into a safe place, and one or both of the partners in the relationship don't realize that they've no longer been moving forward. And it's same thing happens in friendships. Like, well, I go to tea with my friend every single week and nothing ever changes, and we only talk about the same thing, and we're always bitching, and I don't like that anymore, right? Or change is part of the world. And this 2-6 shadow shows us that if we don't move and we don't have good, healthy boundaries, we're not constantly working on ourselves, we're not constantly working on the relationships with the people around us and moving forward in that, that shadow gets really big. The wolf comes out of the woods and gets you off your path. It happens to people all the time. It's happened to me. I'm not exclusionary in this. So it's very much the message today is about the shadow and light of your life. Like, so now we're working on relationship. Where is the relationships in your life? And that's a really big statement. So don't spend all week like taking every single relationship apart. Don't do that. But think of the one relationship that you're really struggling with and look at it. Where's the shadow in that? And then let's look at Masule. So the Lady of Masks is the shaper. And she brings us the awareness, very specifically, of reclamation, vanity, and surface appearances. This is where the shadow goes into this place of, you got to be careful. Don't just change it on the surface. You have to do the hard work. It's very interesting. I've had some interesting conversations recently with a variety of people, and many of them come back to this same place of, I don't like the shadow. I don't like being in fear. I don't like to be ashamed. I don't like to be disappointed in people. So I'm going to move. I'm going to move into a different apartment. I'm going to move my job. I'm going to move to the other side of the country. I'm going to do this big move. And in that move, because I'm changing, all of the things that I think are creating the shadow, I'm going to fix it. But it's a surface thing. It's all surface. The shaper in this paradigm is really about the nitty-gritty, diving into the very specific things that are creating this shadow in your life, these disappointments, these circling the drain, these karmic repeats. If you're just changing the surface, you're not going to get anywhere. And there's a component of the specificity of crystallization, this distilling down to what is the real thing that's causing these shadows constantly to emerge, these patterns. And there is this amazing connection that you have to have with yourself. You have to be really, really honest with yourself. And find the joyful pieces. You are not all awful. There is nothing about you that is completely dark. There's nothing about you that's completely bad. We get swirly in those negative self-talky places, right? And it's really easy to get caught in that, especially if you've got shadow and no movement, right? So who are you? Who are you in these relationships? What do you bring? You bring joy, you bring playfulness, you bring the ability to crack a joke when everybody's being too serious. You can dance, you are spontaneous, you're creative, whatever the things are that you are, because everybody has qualities of many of these things, right? And the shaper says, reclaim your truth, reclaim your joy, reclaim your playfulness, reclaim the possibilities of what could be when you come out of that shadow. And this will start you emerging from the shadow. As the shaper says, the Lady of Masks, she's of the realm of accepting the obligations to seek a simple, finite existence, understanding the balance between the rational and the emotional. You've got to feel it, and yet you still have to live in the world, right? You still have to have a job and bring money in and pay your bills. I mean, we say that, but I always question these things. I question absolutes. And this card helps you question those absolutes. This card is not about absolutes. This card is about questioning all the things. But why? Why? Why are we doing it that way? Why is it that way? Why can't we do it differently? Why can't we think of coming outside of that? That's the 7. The 7 is always doing that. And the 3 wants to know why, because the 3 is noticing all the details that the 7 skips, right? But that's okay, because these are the things that help you realize that you can move, you can change your job, you can divorce your husband, you can break up with all of your friends, you can start a new hobby, you can do all the things. But it's surface level stuff. You still have to do the inner work. And there's a lot of detail, there's a lot of focus that needs to happen to really work on that. And if one of the things that the natural number 3s have taught me is that they can get depressed really quickly, and the people around them won't know that they're depressed, because they're so good at going inside and seeing all those focused details, and they're so good at getting caught in their own shadow. But they also have the ability to draw out everybody else's joy and to get them out of their cycle. So there's a lot in that to unpack, right? Okay, so if we're doing light and shadow, the last card is a maiden card, the metamorphosis, the power and strength within our surrender to change. So I like how this card in the book, it says, the nature of life is ongoing invitation, and at times challenges us to participate in its perpetual metamorphosis. Perpetual metamorphosis. And this card is about choices. So we've gone the gambit, right? The duality, the shadow of light and dark, shadow and light, and the gray in between. And then recognizing, yeah, we can get swirly, we can get caught in fear, get caught in the paradigm of not being able to move forward, losing ourselves in relationships, losing ourselves in other people's obligations, losing ourselves and not being able to move forward. And then, oh my God, to get unstuck, I'm just going to change everything. But it's cosmetic. You're changing the surface things, but you're not really working on yourself. If you don't figure out what your boundaries are and you're not getting uncomfortable with boundaries, if you're not getting uncomfortable with the change and the working on the shadow, you're not really working on the shadow. It requires being uncomfortable with being uncomfortable. And we always have choice. The metamorphosis change of recognizing how to move between the light and the shadow, back to the light and the shadow, back to the light and shadow. It's very much a circle 8. If I were to draw a circle 8, I would go around, through, down, and around. It would be this infinity symbol that never ends. The snake is always eating its own tail forever, okay? But this metamorphosis change requires choice. And all the cards in between are all about choices. We're choosing to lose ourselves in other people. We're choosing to lose ourselves in other people's goals. We're choosing to buy into a fear paradigm. And when we realize that that's what we're doing, the natural next step is to run away. To run away, change a surface thing, change a job, change a relationship, change something. So that change makes us feel like we've done something. But true change requires difficult choices and requires true metamorphosis. And the Maiden card is very much a good apropos, like it says in the book. Like, it's easy to say, this is really hard, and I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to go back over here to the shadow, and I'm also going to blame the universe for it. I'm going to rail against it. Totally okay. We all do it. But choice. And I know I've talked on this channel a lot about choices. We have so many choices. It's very interesting when I meet someone and they say, I didn't have a choice. I know that that person is caught somewhere in the middle here. That person is usually caught somewhere in here. They've recognized there was sort of a choice, maybe, but usually they're caught here. They're caught here in the middle where they don't feel, they can't see, they can't recognize that every decision, everything you do in your life are mini transformative metamorphosis opportunities of choice. That's why we're here. Are you coming, Astra? You going to join us today? Yes, no? Oh, that tail. We have so many choices. And one of the beautiful things, ironically, when I talk about choice is our animal companions, right? Astra is making a choice. She's trying to figure out, because we've got a new neighborhood kitty that's been hunting in our yard, and she loves to watch him. So she has a choice. She can sit in my lap, which she really wants to do, but she's not sure he's done hunting, and he's exciting to watch. So she has a choice. I'm not going to make her do anything. It's her choice, right? We all have choices. In everything that we do, moment to moment, we make all kinds of choices in our lives. And these choices impact future decisions. They impact our shadow and light in our day-to-day life. So it's really important that when we're looking at working with the shadow and the light, recognize that it's hard, and recognize that you have choices. And you can stop the journey. You can say, okay, I don't want to deal with this right now. And you can ask your guides. You can say, okay, this is too much right now. Can I do something else for just a little while? I'll come back to it, right? Say, I don't want to give up the journey. I don't want to give up on my metamorphosis. I don't want to give up making myself better. But it's really hard and it's really heavy, and I want to put it down for a day or two. The universe will help you with that. But also recognize that if you've committed to a change, the universe will do everything in its power to help you with that. And part of universe helping you with that is keeping things moving. It will keep things moving. So if you put it out in the universe, this is too much, I don't want to do this, I'm done, universe will stop things. And one of the things I've learned is that when the universe says, oh, she's asked for a break, he's asked for a break, everything stops. So if everything stops, you're not moving. And that in itself creates a swirly bit. You can get caught in the swirly bits of shadow. Trust the universe. The universe, your blueprint, your guides, they will all help you move forward at the pace you need to, and that your soul is ready for. That you as a higher entity, before you came here and wrote your blueprint and turned off the memory lights, you knew what you were doing. You knew what you were doing when you came into this life. Trust that. Trust that. You are a beautiful light entity. I've never met an evil person. I've met people who have bad behavior. I've met people who are caught in karma. I've met people who are roughly dark entities that they're off their blueprint. That doesn't mean they're bad, they're just off their blueprint. And I've met entities of a lot of different kinds, and their motivations are different, but that doesn't mean they're bad. That buys into a fear paradigm. And if you get caught in a fear paradigm, you get caught in karma. Recognize that you have so many choices. And universe and your guides and your blueprint and all the things that make you a beautiful divine entity living in a meat suit experience, you knew what you were doing when you came here. Trust your guides, trust your blueprint. It's the way it is because you made it that way. So if you're struggling with stuff and you cry out to the universe, stop, 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 it will stop. But that also means wherever it stops is where you're going to swirl. So trust the universe to keep things moving and trust the choices you make. Movement is necessary and it's also joyful. I think of 5 is like this intuitive knowing of what's needed to keep us moving forward. I think of the 6 as this dancing figure who's always moving. 2s and 6s, oh, they need movement constantly. It's amazing. 3s also need movement. 7s love to keep moving. Like those what I call the middle combos, they're all about movement and in a totally different dynamic than the 1-5 and the 4-8. They also need movement, but it's a different kind of movement. But that 2-6, 3-7, one of the beautiful things I've learned about it is that those 4 natural numbers and those 4 numbers and how they work within sacred geometry and how they work in numerology and how they work even within astrology, they are very dynamic. And in the medicine wheel, when I look at 2 and 6, let's see. So 2 is movement, earth, connection. So it's about earth, engagement, harmony. And then 6 is right next to it on the outer wheel. It's breath. So movement. When you're breathing, think of when you're running and you're moving and you're like, like your breath really has to engage. Don't do that, Astra. Don't do that. And then your 3 is, oh, I need to take a little bit of a rest, but it's also that rest is fire. Have you ever met a fire that truly rests? Right? Fire is rest, but it also is the generosity that drives the connection. And then 7 is water, purpose, freedom, fun, and possibility. And no purpose is a dreaded feeling. It's an overwhelmed existential dread. It's all the outer wheel. This outer wheel has to happen in the medicine wheel dynamic. It's constantly moving. These ones have their own pace, but they're slower. They're slower in the inner wheel. But this one's constantly moving. And that outer wheel is community. That's where we all come together to support all the layers of the wheel. I wish I could do this in more of a 3D. I have this image in my head I'd love to get out. I'm not a graphic design artist, so anyway, I hope you all have a beautiful day. I hope that helps you this week. Lean into being honest with yourself in the shadow light journey. You've got this. You've got this. You're a beautiful entity. You've got this. Make choices. Don't let yourself get stagnant. Keep moving. It's easy to get caught in the rest when you hold your breath and you don't keep moving. Go for a picnic. Get out. Go on a hike. Go hang out at a cat cafe. Go have some tea, go to a coffee shop. Just sit at a coffee shop and doom scroll for an hour. At least you're with people. Go out, get out with people, get out, connect to your community, and accept the possibilities. I hope you all have a beautiful day, and I will see you in prayer. Blessed be.